I think we're live. I think we're alive now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. What show? It's called the Weekly Spinner Rack, and I'm your host, Chris. This is going to be a good one. There's a lot of DC news this week to talk about. There's a lot of sort of movie and TV development of various comic books to talk about. And there's some fascinating comics that we'll review. There was a really great issue of Lobo by Kyle Starks and Kyle Hotz. There was a sequel to Batman The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Edward Risso. And I was like, is that going to be any good? It's pretty damn good. There's some fun stuff in there, like Uncanny X-Men by Gail Simone and David Marquez. And we are all set to have a pair of guests. We're doing some troubleshooting behind the scenes right now. Sorry. But, once we get that set, I've got a guest. I'll keep that a secret for just a moment. And I'll say hello to some of the folks that have jumped in. Yes. So I did do a 7-hour stream last Friday. That's what Edison is referring to. Did not expect to. Probably wouldn't have committed to it if I knew it was going to be that long. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Hello to everybody. Bronze Age Nerd. That's cool. He's got a show after mine on his channel. There's my sister. Hello. Double salute. Sure. You can have a double salute. I know, Randy. I know. I had 29 guests on Friday's live stream talking about just letting people pitch their indie comic or their crowdfunded campaign. It was great. It was a real blast. And yeah, I just had a really great time talking to everybody on that. Let me cough real quick. And see. To my guest in the green room, can you hear me now? Can you give me a thumbs up if you... Okay. All right. Then we're just going to get right into it because I'm excited to have this guest. Got to meet him in person about a year ago. He's had an amazing last year, doing everything from Alien to Hulk to Ninja Turtles. Let's bring him on. Danny Earls. How are you, Danny?
How are you, Chris? Sorry about that, mate. I was a bit of technical difficulties, mate.
Oh, that's pretty normal on live shows, so don't feel bad about that at all. Thank you for getting it sorted. How are you? Mate. I know it's quite late.
Mate. No worries, Chris. Listen, I work all hours, mate, so no worries at all. I appreciate you having me on, mate. Thanks a million.
You've been having such a great career, Danny, and after meeting you in person, you're just one of the kindest guys I've met in comics. So it's nice to see your success. You want people that are nice to have that success. But I'm curious. Mate. I've got a question, right off the bat, because in Ireland it's I think 1 a.m. right now. Am I correct?
It is, mate. Yeah.
So you're obviously putting in long hours drawing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you are also you're in good shape. You were a professional footballer for 9 years here in the States. And I'm curious, have you come up with rules for yourself where you have to get up or you have to take certain breaks? Is there anything like that where you have hard and fast rules to sort of manage your health and your work?
Yeah, it's a real good question, mate. Thanks for the kind words at the start as well, Chris. I really appreciate it. I loved meeting you last year as well, mate. So it's a pleasure to come on. But yeah, mate, do you know what, Chris? It's always been important to me, mate, my health and stuff. I kind of took it for granted, playing football it was almost 15 years I played for. So since I was a kid, since I was even 4 and 5 years of age, I've played. So I've always been active, So coming into this career definitely has been, I don't know if the word shock is the right word, but it's been a definite change in my lifestyle. So it's a lot more kind of sedentary, it's a lot more at your desk all the time. So I definitely make time. My sister owns a gym and I used to work in it before I broke into comic books. So I have the good fortune of being able to use that whenever I want. I still teach classes in the gym. I teach 3 classes a week. So in and around those classes is when I try to get my actual workouts in. So
that's kind of wild. I'm sorry, my jaw dropped thinking that you're fitting in teaching some classes on top of your artwork.
Yeah, I used to teach a lot more to start. When I broke in last year, I was still teaching a good bit, Chris. Yeah, I was trying to. That was it. That was a lot, But then I kind of realized, well, I always wanted to be just full-time drawn anyway, you know, but trying to keep obviously rent going and stuff as well. You kind of have to make things work. You have to figure things out, you know, but I'm fortunate to work around those classes, my workouts, but in the day I definitely do, because I take blocks. I kind of do it in panels. Like if I have 2 panels, okay, hit these 2 panels, I'll walk on the block or get a cup of coffee or whatever, but I'll make it kind of where I want to be active somewhat, you know. We also, me and my fiance have a big bulldog as well, mate. He needs walking, so that kind of takes you away from the desk to have to get him around and get him exercise as well, you know. So that keeps me.
I love hearing that, because I've been working on my wife to let me get a dog, and I'm using the argument, it would be a walking buddy. It would be so good for my health.
Mate, I'm telling you that all I ever wanted was to adopt a dog, mate, and my fiance loves them as well. So it's almost 4 years now. We have him. He's a big American bulldog. He's a massive thing. So it's great when you come home and you're knackered. He's happy to see you. All he wants is go for a walk. So it's good, mate. Just walk around the block or take him on a nice longer one. It's kind of relaxing. It's good for the head as well, pal.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I remember back in college, I had a roommate who was he loved working out, and he always told me the body fuels the mind. And it was such a simple phrase, but I've always kept that. It's like over 25 years ago. And I've just always sort of remembered that, even if I don't respect it the same way somebody like you does.
No, definitely, mate. And listen, it's at the same time, I want to kind of have a really long career, Chris. I don't think, I mean, there's definitely other people have different kind of opinions on kind of working out and being active than me, but I want to be able to, like, although it's not labor intensive, like my dad's a carpenter, right? So he's building houses, he's up on roofs every day. This isn't this isn't that labor intensive in that respect, but it is labor intensive. You have to be kind of like to hit the end of deadlines and stuff. That's kind of the way I'm a bit weird. I'm kind of like militaristic in the way I think and focus and stuff, and that kind of discipline. So I kind of set goals. Not too long ago in the gym, I had to do for charity. I done 1,000 burpees. I think it took like just under 3 hours. So those sort of things, I do those sort of things to then, so when a deadline comes, right, and it's like I have to stay up for 2 nights in a row, right, I've done 1,000 burpees, I can stay up for 2 days in a row. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to kind of harden my mind a little bit to kind of think, okay, I gotta make this work and figure it out as best I can. You know?
Now, Danny, you're an inspiration there, like balancing that stuff, because there's a lot of fantastic artists out there, and I think that today compared to 20, 30, 40 years ago, we start to understand that we need to watch our own health to have a longer career, because the word you use, sedentary, it's kind of true. You know, we sit at a desk, and sometimes the left side of your brain takes over the creative side, and you lose track of time. So it can be very easy to develop some bad habits.
And that's in a double-edged sword. That's kind of the goal. You want to lose track of time because that means you're in the flow of everything. You think you're kind of in the zone. You want to get there, you know. But I also think for your mind as well, mate, it's so important just for your mind to be active and to just give yourself 10 minutes of a walk every day, just to kind of free your head up a little bit. And because it is super intense, and when I don't tend to work with like a lot of external kind of distractions of music or anything like that, so you kind of just focused on the board, you know.
I wanted to congratulate you, by the way. Last weekend, Baltimore Comic-Con, you won a Ringo Award.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
That must have been, I hope that felt good, like, because that was a fan-voted thing.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I can't even put it into words. This whole year, mate, since last year breaking in, I cannot put it into words. If I stop to think about it, mate, I'd terrify myself. So I kind of just put it to the side and crack on. But it is like, speaking actually from the heart and genuinely, it is the most amazing thing ever. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Just wanting to draw comics my whole life, it's been me absolute dream to kind of get any sort of recognition from anybody and to be in the room. Not just that, to be in the room, like Walt Simonson's there, Garcia Lopez is there. Like all these, like, oh my God, I'm looking down at the stage, like Mitch Gerrards and Tom King are looking back at me, and it's like, what? Like, I love that I'm there, but it's like, what is my life right now? Like, you know, I'm reading these comics and studying these artists for years, so I'm like, I couldn't believe it, mate, but it was the most amazing. I still kind of haven't come down for the most amazing weekend ever.
I would have to imagine that we call it soccer, so I keep getting tripped up between saying football and soccer, but I'd have to imagine when you had that career, like you say, like 15 years altogether or so, a lot of travel in that. So now when you go on like these conventions, like to Baltimore, to New York, etc., do you have any like travel tips that you've picked up? You've probably traveled more than the average artist.
Yeah, I would imagine. I was only actually saying to my fiance just recently, Chris, I was trying to tot up the kind of flights I've done. I've taken, I would imagine, well over 1,000 flights, because kind of traveling in between. We used to, so say I played in New York, we'd have to get a connecting flight from like into Atlanta or somewhere out there. That was every other weekend. So you're getting 4 flights every other weekend. So the only thing I've picked up, mate, is to just control the controllables. Just don't stress out. You can't, if a flight's delayed, it's delayed. If you can't, do you know what I mean? There's nothing really net like other than like I traveled with my brother not too long ago, and the flight was delayed and he's kind of stressing it. It's like, what can you do? You know what I mean? It's not really, that's kind of, I suppose that's something I've taken in my life, I suppose, as well. Just kind of just control what you can control, and what you can control, go at it like kind of hell for leather, you know. But other than that, mate, no, I just bring my sketchbook and sketch away and have a coffee, and that's pretty much it now in the airport for me, you know.
You're such a positive person. I'm not trying to embarrass you, but I have to imagine you're about to get very angry at the comics industry. Follow my logic here.
Okay.
You get the Hulk. You get Ninja Turtles covers. Are you like, hey, just because I'm Irish doesn't mean I only work on the green characters?
Do you know what, mate? I've never thought about it.
I can do more than green characters.
Now that you say it, I got to ring Eric Lars to get Savage Dragon on the board. That's about
exactly.
That's a trifecta then, right?
Check them all off.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, he'd probably love to get a cover or something like that from you. But anyway.
Oh, that's amazing, mate. That's brilliant.
Let me think. So yeah, I was talking about some of the stuff that you've been doing recently, and I want to share something with my audience just in case they hadn't seen it, which was your 4 connected covers for the relaunch of Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
If people haven't seen this, Danny's posted like the work in progress, the pencils, the inks, the washes, and the colors. But this is, you know, this is what you drew. This is a huge scene. It's easy to just sort of get lost in the fun of like, okay, it's moving left to right. We've got each of the Ninja Turtles, you know, like pretty central. There's fun little Easter eggs. What might not be easy for everybody to know when you glance at this is that the perspective on this is such a large piece that your endpoints for figuring out the perspective must have been like, just like almost miles apart, or kilometers.
Yeah, it was in and around, I think it was in around 6 feet, because I taped them to the floor, mate. It's one of those things. I'm not like proficient enough in kind of built up knowledge to just to do things by eye, right? So like I know like the likes of Greg Capullo and stuff, they can just kind of jot things down.
Sometimes, yeah.
I remember Capullo talked about his 0 year cover, or it was a 0 year splash, I think, in Batman, and Bruce is pulling across the curtains, and it's an incredible cityscape. And I don't know. I think that was the first time in a long time where he said he got the kind of perspective grids out and stuff, you know. But for me, with a piece like that, any sort of like, it's like a golf swing, right? If you're kind of three degrees off, you're going to miss the hole by 10 feet, right? It's like that. If you're on those kind of pieces, on those, like that's 4 covers across. So if you're off in perspective in any one of those covers, it's going to look so bad on the last cover, you know. So it was super important for me. So we laid them all out at the start on the floor. So all the covers were laid out, but I had to draw them individually. I think it was in 4 months. I had one to do every month.
Sure.
So it was kind of once I had all that laid out, it took me quite a while to do it, but once I had them all laid out, it was no problem. The hardest thing with this cover was to match up the washes each month. You know, I kind of work in 3 tones of washes anyway. So I kind of have like a 30% tone, a 50% tone, a 70% tone. So I matched it up okay, but there was definitely a couple of digital kind of touch-ups to there's Greg. I just want to give Greg a shout out there. Chris, Greg is the man. Talk about kind of people look at these covers.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of publicity for IDW folks, so he would have seen.
Yeah, and he got me so many eyeballs on these covers, you know, so it was amazing. But yeah, there was a little bit, not a lot. Actually, do you know what, Chris? I actually have them here. Do you want me to show you the original art for it here?
Oh my God, I think that would be a huge treat for us. Yeah, here, let me give you a little more space.
So you can see, you can kind of like, if I can kind of show here, so that's cover 1. And you can kind of, let's see.
Sort of zoom in.
So you can see kind of the details stuff's already on it. There's a couple little details I had to take out in the first cover, but you can see it's pretty much matched up. So if I kind of try to put 2 side by side, That's the first and the last cover. So the washes are kind of similar enough, but it was difficult. There's definitely kind of some digital kind of touch-ups in there that I had to make kind of like on like after in Photoshop and stuff. But yeah, the perspective once that was laid in, mate, it was kind of just following people's, I think perspective, it floors people a little bit. It's kind of the question I get the most, you know. I'm like I said, I'm kind of militaristic. I kind of perspective, there's rules in perspective, so I tried to learn them. Not that I know everything about perspective, but I was like, okay, perspective can't be broken. There's rules there. So once you learn it all, you only have to follow the rules then. So it's not like when you're trying to put a figure in a foreshortened pose or something. That's way more difficult because that can look any sort of way. There's not necessarily a rule to show a foreshortened figure. There is to an extent, but you can kind of put your own twist on it. But with backgrounds and stuff, it's just the perspectives there. Then the creativity comes in and what kind of buildings you put in and what details you put on the buildings. But the actual rules of perspective kind of stay the same, you know?
Folks, I mean, if you get a chance to find these covers, because they're variant covers, like, of course you want to pick them up. I hope that IDW is giving some super strong consideration to literally making this a poster or a print, because this is a lot more work than the typical cover gets for attention. And there's so many little details that you've thrown in with like references to, you know, the creators and stuff like that. I don't know. It's really impressive. It's a really amazing piece.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks, mate. Yeah, it was so fun as well. Like the Turtles, I grew up on the Turtles, like, so to get that kind of call, yeah, like, I mean, me and my brother's a real big kind of nerd like me as well, you know. I kind of fit into both worlds. I was a footballer and the nerds, I had to hide that a bit growing up, and now I've just fully dived into the nerd side of things, so I'm good. But like, we grew up on the Turtles, so like, we made a YouTube channel not too long ago, and he kind of named it after a couple of the Turtles. So it's like one of those things that is like such a dream job for me to get. It was
That's
like
nice.
so. And I knew it was a big relaunch. I try to put everything I have into covers that I get anyway, but like to put that one was like, right, let's kind of put me heart and soul into this. If I only got one chance to draw the Turtles, what would I do with it? And I was kind of happy that I got the chance to do that. You know, it was a great opportunity as well.
I agree that you seem to put everything into every piece of art. I mean, I remember an early piece was that great No One cover you did for like Kyle Higgins. I thought that thing was extremely detailed. That's another example of like cities. But you also have like a really organic style. I love that sometimes on your socials you've posted warm-ups and cool-downs where you're working with washes, you're working with blades. Like, do you have a favorite set of tools that you enjoy working with?
Do you know what? Not this. Nick Klein now is working, so he's like the master, right? Nick's on the Hulk at the minute, and he just uses a brush, right? Like and this his run of the Hulk's just using a brush, and I absolutely adore that he does that. Like that's such an amazing kind of skill to have. But for me, I didn't grow up learning from, like, I don't have an education on that, Chris. I taught myself. Like, I use that word lightly because I went to artists to get advice and stuff over the years, you know.
Sure.
But I literally just use anything I have. Like, I go through phases when I was kind of learning. Like Alberto Breccia used a razor, so I was like, okay, let's try use that and see how to. And then once you kind of pick up tools like brushes, pens, paper, even when you're starting out, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's just that you got to figure out how to draw. But when you get into the nuances of things and understand how like certain inks react to certain paper and how you can get certain effects on things, I just love the idea of using everything. I really do. Like, even on my I just finished inking a page before we jumped on here, and I use splatter. I actually tried to use a bit of bleach on it. When you hit ink with bleach, it disperses the ink.
Yeah,
but it done it a bit too much on the page, so I kind of went back over it a bit. But I'm just trying to kind of always not, because the superfluous details don't really matter unless the structural drawing's not good, you know. But at the same time, if you can get those kind of details to look cool, it's like, oh yeah, let's try use all these different tools. So I don't really rule anything out right now. I just love using anything I can get my hands on.
One thing I love about some of your sequential work that I wanted to talk about was just how clear the storytelling was, because we were just talking about some covers and stuff. It's really a very different set of skills to make one iconic, detailed, eye-catching and dynamic image versus, like, you know, panel to panel storytelling. And I'm curious, you know, did you have any specific influences for panel to panel storytelling, or is that also like just all self-taught?
No, there's definitely like, listen, for the last 10 years, Chris, I've done nothing. Like when I like something, I obsess over it. So it's like I don't know anything but comic books now, but one of my artists I love the most is John Paul Leon. And I think
Oh
John
yeah.
Paul, like he's so technical, but his storytelling is like just incredible. But I kind of tried to learn from, as you find a good artist, like I love, everyone kind of knows by now I love Capullo and stuff, but then you kind of bring back the chain, and he learned from Buscema, and then you think Buscema, who did he learn from? But I kind of started from the ground up when I was learning. I was like, right, who's the best? And Will Eisner. I started with Will Eisner and his kind of graphic storytelling book. So it was like it's just kind of my big thing. I was fascinated when I was learning about storytelling. So you look at Mignola. Mignola doesn't necessarily choose the most dynamic camera angles, but everything he does is like so perfect. He's a genius, and that can't really be captured. So I was thinking, what can you take from him? And what I took from Mignola was just a clear storytelling. It was so clear. And I remember reading a thing from Will Eisner. He has like, look at his spirit books and stuff, and you see all the cool up shots and down shots and all, but then he just paired it right back near the end of his career to having, he said it was like a theater shot, so everything was just straight on. So like he just wanted to make everything so readable. And then I think I in my Hellfire book, my original book, the first book I ever done, I kind of tried to take a bit of that and just kind of have everything super readable. But as you break in then to kind of Marvel and stuff, you want to add a bit more kind of dynamism to your pages, and I don't want to be flashy for flashy's sake, but you want to kind of be like eye-catching at the same time. But the main thing for me is exactly, you want someone to turn the page and go, oh, that's cool. But I don't tend to break panel borders and stuff unless it's like kind of for a reason. Little bits and pieces I will here and there, but it's just structural storytelling is like, it's so important for me. Like if I always kind of bring my nieces and nephews into me studio, I don't have kids, but I bring them and say, hey, can you tell what's going on in this book? It might be, you might be able to read it, but they're like, oh yeah, this. So that's kind of a nice way for me
that's great.
Yeah, to say like, oh, they know what's going on, so that means someone else might know what's going on. But just clear and structured storytelling is kind of the most important thing for me, rather than kind of being flashy on top of it,
Anybody that's been reading the Hulk right now, Philip Kennedy Johnson's doing a great take on Hulk with all sorts of cool monsters. And yeah, it started with Nick Klein. You got a fill-in issue. All of a sudden, you're doing like bunches of fill-in issues. You're doing the one-shots for Hulk. Like you're doing a lot of Hulk all of a sudden. Was that always sort of the plan, or did like it spring off like your first issue went well and they were like, let's get you some more Hulk stuff?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a plan, Chris. No, it was just the opportunity arose just before New York Comic Con last year. I talked to Will Moss, the editor, and he said, would I like to come on board? And the first arc that I done, the Frozen Charlotte arc, that was supposed to be 2 issues, and Philip wanted to kind of extend it to make that story a little bit bigger. So they asked would I like another one? And then we changed editors, and they just kept me on board. And I suppose they like what I done, and I kind of just kept on like just hitting me deadlines and making sure the work was good enough. And now it feels a little bit more like a team, Chris. It does feel like that. Like me and Nick talk all the time. We don't not necessarily chat ideas back and forth, but we send like designs back and forth. So it does feel. So cool. I met Philip just in Baltimore this weekend, and it does feel, like I said, like more of a team now. It'll always be Nick's book. Nick is the man, and he's incredible. But I'm just grateful and delighted to be along with those kind of creators, because it is a cool story, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I really liked that arc that you did with Charlotte and stuff in New Orleans, because I went to college there, and I was like, yeah, you were really getting the vibe of New Orleans. Had you ever gotten to visit there when you were living here?
No, we talked about that. It's the one place I really wanted to go to. Do you know what the big thing was in that? Actually, Nick and Philip both said that I kind of done those warm-up graveyard pieces that you were talking about, and they said,
yeah.
I got on the phone with Philip, and he's like, what do you want to draw? And I was like, give me a graveyard, like anything with a graveyard. I want to try kind of make it spooky. But then I suppose just researching and looking at kind of how things... My big thing is when I kind of do environments, not Chris, it's kind of making it kind of indigenous to the place that it is. So when you look at New Orleans, there's enough quirkiness in those buildings, and enough kind of... There's enough unique aesthetics that is kind of original to New Orleans that you can put it into buildings to make it look like New Orleans. And I'm not saying that there could be... I might put like a triple story building in it that's not in New Orleans. That's something I'll never know without living there, right? Like, but it's
very flat. It's very
Right.
flat. There's not a
Right.
lot of skyscrapers,
course.
but like the things that you do, like the above ground crypts and stuff, that felt
Yeah.
very authentic. And there was a certain like sort of Spanish influence to a lot of the architecture you did that felt very authentic, and French and Spanish, very big
Yeah.
influences on the architecture down there.
Definitely, and that was for. I love research. Like absolutely love research and history and stuff. So when I got that gig and it was going to be in New Orleans, I like just watched documentaries, tried to read as much as I can, learn as much as I can about the place, and kind of just think if there's something kind of cool that I could put that's kind of, like I said, indigenous to New Orleans. And someone could pick it up, like you, someone that lived there. Oh, that's in there. That's cool. Do you know what I mean? That I love doing that sort of stuff for kind of people to see, but more so for my own sake. If someone drew Dublin and they made it look like New York City, I would be like, that's not Dublin. Do you know what I mean? So I'd like to. That's why I like kind of researching things to be. I'm not beholden to it, but I like to kind of make it look kind of like the place.
It doesn't always have to be purely authentic so much as feel authentic, if that makes sense. At least in comics, like as long as there's some details that make something feel authentic, that's enough to like really get the tone and the atmosphere. Anyway, I really liked it.
Thanks, mate.
I mean, I know it's late, so I won't keep you too long, but I am curious,
good.
What kind of stuff should we keep our eye out for? What's coming up that you're able to talk about? Anything?
Not necessarily. No, I'm just still on the Hulk, Chris. Actually, there's I'm on issue 20. I don't know if anything else has been announced just yet. After that, but so I'm actually drawing Werewolf by Night, which is like,
yes.
Do you know what? When I talk about the Hulk, me and Philip chat, and it's like, are you enjoying the book? It's like, I'm enjoying the book. I'm drawing I get to wake up every day and draw werewolves and monsters and the Hulk ripping them to shreds. I'm like, I don't think I could like me life anymore. Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, it's hard work and long hours, but it's all I've ever dreamed of. And to get on this book, it's like it's kind of everything that I love. Like my own book dives into monsters and all that stuff, like so mythology, and Philip's big into that, and we kind of connect on that, the two of us, a lot. So like when I get to, like, staying on the Hulk for me right now is just like it's a dream. It's perfect for me, you know. I have a couple kind of more covers for DC and that coming out, but for right now, interiors is the Hulk, and I'm loving it.
Well, we gotta at some point have you work with Gail Simone. I mean, she definitely did a lot to like help promote you and stuff when she saw you at that convention like a couple years ago. But I would love to see you two team up at some point. Yeah,
we've been trying. It kind of, there's been a couple things last year that we tried to kind of figure out. It just didn't quite work out. But I mean, at the minute, Gail is just absolutely on fire. But like,
she's so busy.
Oh like, my God! It's like
James Bond, X-Men, Superman. There's something else. It's hard to keep up. She's really on fire.
It's incredible. I mean, it was so good, that story with Gail. I know you got a busy show, Chris, so I won't keep you here, mate. But
no, it's fine.
That show with Gail, it was so funny. I was actually talking to him the other day, my fiance, and we were saying I went to see her in Top Bubble. And I showed her Iron Fist and Daredevil pages. And the story kind of was that people, the second after Top Bubble, she tweeted out my stuff. And she did. She was amazing. But those pages didn't quite hit when she tweeted them out. And I gave her a shout about 2 months later when it finished those Batman samples. And that's when it came out. And since then, like, I've thanked her every chance I can, and I don't think I could do it enough. But I don't think I could do it enough. But like, but you know what, Chris? Everyone, like, if I could thank everyone, I haven't got here without everyone's help. Do you know what I mean? I met Lee Bermejo about 8 years ago in Top Bubble, and Lee has been like I've sent him work pretty routinely every 6 months or so since then. After about 2 years I met him, I wrote to him when I thought it was good enough to send him work again, and every time I wrote to Lee, he gave me like, because people can give you good advice, but Lee gave me like actual tangible advice, like, hey, this could be worked on. And every time I went back, I took like 6 months, really honed in and sent it back again. And since then, he's just kind of like always been there and gave me amazing advice. But so many artists like that. The biggest one that's helped me the most in career-wise in comic books is Will Sliney. He drew Spider-Man. He draws Spider-Man for Marvel. Like, he's incredible. But he's Irish, and Will has helped me. All the Irish contingent, like Stephen Mooney and Declan and stuff as well. But like, Will has just been like me father this year. Even questions with like, a contract or an email to Marvel, straight onto Will, and he's just so gracious to help me, you know. So I'll be nowhere anywhere near where I am now, Chris, without everybody's help. Do you know what I mean? Art only gets you so far, but you need help of people as well, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it's been said by many people that you need three things to be successful. You need, like, talent, you need to work hard, and you need to get along with people. And you can get by with two of those. I would argue you have all three, Danny. So it was really fun to get to talk to you. I appreciate you being available so late tonight. And
of course.
a big fan, and I want to see you continue this successful streak.
Thank you, Chris. Listen, I love your show, mate. I love what you do for artists, and I love your passion for comic books, mate. And I always tune into your, even if it's not live, I tune into your shows next day and stuff. So I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, pal. Hopefully, we'll see you in New York City.
Yeah, I will be there on Saturday. So I wasn't sure if you were there or not, but I will keep an eye out for you then.
Perfect. Sounds good, buddy. Enjoy the show tonight. All right. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Take care. Have a good night.
Take care, buddy. All right, mate.
Bye. Thanks for giving Danny so many kind words of encouragement there. I think a lot of you guys probably love his work as much as I do. He's really, really amazing. Isn't he? I wanted to share that because I've got to meet him in person. Almost a year ago, it was that, like, New York Comic Con. I got to meet him in person and have a good conversation more than once. Just an incredible guy, really, really talented. And he just works so hard, and he's so kind and gracious to everybody else. I really admire him a lot. So yeah, I know. Anyway, yeah, a lot of wonderful comments. That's great. And I can get into the news, but unless I do have a second person that was looking to drop in, and I'll just say that you're more than welcome to pop in if you are ready. I've got some stuff to share because we'll add this. What are we talking about? Surprise, surprise.
Oh,
we've got Jimmy Jams.
Whoa. People are going to be annoyed by me at this point, buddy. It's
not at all, dude. I think everybody likes a little bit of extra Mahfood on their plate. What are we dropping in? We're not going to do quite like a 30-minute interview here, but I was teasing it there. What did you want to talk about, my friend?
Not at all. Just a final reminder that my creator-owned comic book Kickstarter launches tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. The book is called Defective Comics Presents Savage Street Vigilante. This is a superhero parody comic book. Check out the variant covers right here. Jim Rugg on the left-hand side, Mike Huddleston on the right. Absolutely incredible work from these two buddies of mine. And what it is, Chris, is I'm just offering a 48-page one-shot comic book. We've got the variant covers. We've got a 5-piece print set. We've got some original art tiers. These are examples of the interior pages. These are not lettered yet, but this is basically a fusion of superhero parody mixed with horror, action, comedy, basically whatever genre you want, man. I've kind of crammed it into this book. So I don't know if
you're honestly set up to have a really successful campaign, Jim. You've gotten over 1,000 pre-launch people following the page, which is really, really strong. I think you're on track to have a really good campaign with this. But is there anything you think that this compares to? Is like, if people haven't, like, say, read your stuff, like, is there anything that you could point to and say, hey, maybe if you like this, you might like that? And it doesn't even have to be comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously you and I, our obsession with like B movies and that level of grindhouse kind of cinema has something to do with this. I'm also a huge fan of the original 80s Mirage Studios Ninja Turtles comics. Keith Giffen, his 80s work, Simon Bisley, early 90s Lobo. It's that kind of vibe. You know,
that makes sense. That makes sense. Let me see. I think I can throw the link in here too. Give me 2 seconds.
That'd be great. Of course.
And I'll put it in the description too when I edit this show after it ends, folks. But
thanks,
here,
man.
I'll do this.
I appreciate this so much. And also, thank you again for having me on the 7-hour epic Friday night live stream.
Can you believe that?
It was nuts, dude. Just to witness that, I was like, wow, this is.
I had to like let everybody talk if they were willing to show up and wait and talk, a lot of them to a stranger. But I've seen a few people that it seems like it gave them a big bump. There was one guy that had a campaign. He was down to 60 hours. He was right around $5,000 of a $10,000 goal, and he hit it. Like that ended this morning.
That's
and
awesome.
I don't know for a fact if I helped or not, but it probably did.
Yeah, man. I mean, dude, that's the thing is like everything helps. That's why I just, am bullying my way onto your show for one more time, one more final push. Cause that's what today's been for me. It's just been one final push, and your chat and like your fan base for the show here has always been so cool to me and my interactions with them online that I just wanted to, hustle it one last time. I'm going to bounce out of here basically because I want to hear the news, but
I'm going to get into that.
Dude.
But I will also just give you a plug since you're here, folks. Jim has started doing a lot of live streams with his buddy Sean Crystal on Ink Pulp. That's here on YouTube, Ink Pulp. They do an Ink Pulp live show. They've got a lot of themes. And so I would recommend checking that out too. You'll hear a few more plugs for the book.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Good luck, man.
Take care, you guys.
Take care.
Yep.
All right. Shall we do some actual news of the week? I think so. I think that you guys have been patient. So, ta-da. Look at that. What a thumbnail. There's Danny. And I just realized, look at how much green we're wearing. So much green. Anyway, we're going to get into things. Like I said, there's a lot of DC and entertainment news. So the first piece here is certainly an example of that. Didn't expect this, but Lady Gaga has dropped a secret, or at least unexpected, I should say, extra album, specifically doing standards, singing various standards, old hits, to promote Joker too. Yeah, so the album's called Harlequin, full of classic standards. A lot of them are in the movie, and this is the movie where she's going to play Harleen Lee Quinzel. So I guess that's a different take on Harley Quinn. But yeah, it's Lady Gaga. This is a reference to the... Oh, I haven't seen that joke, but I've seen a bunch of those episodes. They're pretty funny. I don't know what to expect out of it. I'll be honest. I'm not that excited for the movie. I probably will enjoy listening to these songs more. I think Lady Gaga is pretty damn talented. It feels a little weird to still call her Lady Gaga because she goes by her real name so much now, but that's the name on the album, so that's what I'm going with. This is a quote about the album that she gave to Rolling Stone. I had such a deep relationship with Lee, and when I was done filming the movie, I wasn't done with her. So that's what's the connection. And the movie, if you're curious, does come out October 4th. But yeah, if you look, there's songs like That's Life. What's that? Frank Sinatra. Who sings Get Happy? I forget Get Happy. Is that Judy Garland? It's hard to remember. I'm not an expert. I'll probably see it out of curiosity, but I like that, JoJo. Yeah, sometimes I am more curious about the reaction of my favorite reviewers than I am about the movie itself. We'll see. Oh yeah, I mean it went up in budget an insane amount. I don't know if that was necessary, but we'll see. Yes. What's yes to, Gene? I lost track of what I'd said. But, it's yes to Judy Garland, right? Yeah, Judy Garland. Okay. We will keep going. James Gunn, also in comics, he dismissed the comics rumors. So specifically, Bleeding Cool had reported they heard a rumor that James Gunn was going to be writing a comic at DC. Well, that prompted him to do this response on Threads. I just wanted to mention it. So, like, this is just a news outlet, like, reporting, like, rumor, James Gunn is reportedly writing his own DC Superman comic book. Source, Bleeding Cool. And James says, "Dear God, no. Although working with Jim Lee would be amazing, I'd be dead if I took this on." That makes sense. There have been so many announcements in the past years of people in TV and movies that would work on a comic. They're going to work on this comic. They're going to work on the comic. Almost all of it doesn't happen. They might do their own sort of self-published idea, like Keanu Reeves doing Berserker. But it's very rare for, say, Iman Vellani to work on Ms. Marvel. You know, she co-writes the Ms. Marvel title. But I remember, boy, we don't really want to remember this anymore. Bryan Singer kept getting announced. Marvel was like, Bryan Singer is going to write the Ultimate X-Men title. He's going to write it. Robert Kirkman is doing like a short arc, and then it's Bryan Singer. And then, you know, we're like 5 years later, and Kirkman's still writing it. And they were like, he got busy. It's like, yeah, no shit. I don't know when the comic of Megalopolis is coming out, or if it did. I'll have to double check, but I'll tell you that I'm more interested in the comic than the movie. I love Coppola. He's given us so many great movies, but boy, Megalopolis does not really look good. I really wish it did, but it does not look that great to me. We'll see. We'll see. There's the catchphrase that I need a hat on, but I'm pretty sure there's no way it's going to make its money back. Coppola sold off at least a big chunk, if not all of his vineyard. He's got a very successful winery. He sold off his vineyard so that he could fund the movie. It had $120 million budget, and I think worldwide it's made $6 million in 1 week. Sorry, that's not making its money back. But I am curious about it. I'm curious. I just don't anticipate it being great. But I am curious about the Megalopolis comic. That I am curious about. It sounds insane. Definitely going to see it. All right. DC Supervillain movie. None of us expected this. This wasn't something that like was hinted at. But Deadline, which is not a rumor source, they're just like a Hollywood trade publication. They reported that DC is currently developing a movie featuring supervillains Bane and Deathstroke. The writer is Matthew Orton, so there is somebody actually working on it, and he just wrote the Captain America Brave New World. We haven't seen that yet, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll try to be hopeful. I don't know. If you don't know these characters, Deathstroke, basically a mercenary. He was created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez in New Teen Titans #2 from 1980. And then Bane is a prisoner who agreed to test the super steroid Venom, became a Batman villain. He was created by Chuck Dixon and Graham Nolan in Batman Vengeance of Bane from 1993. What they would be doing together, I really don't know. I just have no idea. They're great characters. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate the support. That's very nice. And thank you again to the earlier super chat from Francisco Q. I appreciate both. That's a lot. Maybe they're both these are both villains that are very successful, we'll say. You know, they get beaten by the heroes, but they have a lot of wins behind them too. Randy, DC supervillains, Zach Levi and Dean Cain. Yeah, if you didn't see, like, what Zach Levi is going around promoting RFK Jr. and stuff right now. He's wild. They'll just be gym buddies. Yeah. What if it's just a gym movie? It's not like them trying to conquer the world or anything. They're just working out, going, bro, you did a really good job on the tricep. A lot of people ignore that, but not you. Thanks for noticing, bro. That's my impression. Except it would be more like, thanks for noticing, bro. That's my perfect Bane impression. Kyle Chandler is going to star in Lanterns. What's all that mean? Well, actor Kyle Chandler, seen here, if you don't remember him, He's been in a lot of great stuff. Kyle Chandler's pretty charming. He's been cast as Hal Jordan in the HBO series Lanterns, according to The Hollywood Reporter. The show is written and executive produced by a pretty interesting team. Chris Mundy from Ozark, Damon Lindelof, he did The Watchmen show, he did Lost, and Eisner-winning comics writer Tom King. Interesting team. The show is said to feature Jordan mentoring a young Green Lantern, or younger anyway, John Stewart. And it's going to be like a buddy cop grounded gritty thing. They keep comparing it to things like True Detective, where they're investigating an earthbound murder, but that would have like bigger implications. I thought that's a big part of why I actually put this in, Jeannie. I knew you liked him. So yeah, enjoy. Since I mentioned Green Lantern, I thought I'd mention very briefly this new comic that he's got coming out. DC announced this week Green Lantern, Green Arrow, World's Finest Special #1. I was wearing my headphone, but I don't need to anymore. And that's a new one-shot. It's interesting that they're using the World's Finest branding, but I think that'll make sense if I give a few more details here. I'm a big fan of Tom King in general. Not that every comic he's written has been like perfect. There's one or two that I don't like, but I like a lot more than I don't like. And the ones I like, I really like. I remember Early Edition. That was a cool show. And of course, a lot of people will always remember him from Friday Night Lights. That was a very successful show. Yep, that is Zach Levi. A lot of comics fans posting the footage of him showing up for 2 seconds in Thor Ragnarok just to get killed by Hela, whatever. Moving on about this comic. It's written by Jeremy Adams, art by Lucas Mayer and Travis Mercer. That was interesting. I don't know whether like one is doing the inking or if it's just got 2 artists. We'll see. Oh, I saw that, Chem Dog. Yeah, Ben Edlund got sick at Baltimore Comic-Con, so he had to cancel NEC. But he did post that he's going to do a makeup appearance around Thanksgiving. He's going to come back to New England around Thanksgiving, and he said he'd go to NEC to do signings and do sort of a makeup then when he's hopefully healthier. I'll get through this news. You guys will let me get through it. It's a 48-page one-shot, comes out December 18th, and it's set in the recent past with the story following the 2 heroes and their sort of adversarial pals. You could call them frenemies and it would be accurate. They're being hunted by Deathstroke. You may remember him from a couple news items ago. So yeah, I think that recent past is sort of what's giving us the World's Finest, because the World's Finest Batman Superman comic by Mark Waid and Dan Mora isn't really set in a very specific timeline. It's just sort of set in the recent past. And I think that that's what they're going for here. It's just saying like, look, let's not get hung up on continuity. Let's just tell a fun story. And I like that. Okay. Mayer's doing the Green Lantern, Green Arrow story, and Mercer is doing the Barry Allen story that's also in the one shot. Thanks, Owen. I had not heard that. I hadn't. So thank you for the extra info. Got it. Hey, who knows? Oh, what's he going to do to a Green Lantern? Look, Deathstroke he's basically like Captain America. You'd say like, well, what's Captain America going to do against Loki or Thanos? He ends up being like pretty good because he's tactical. He thinks and reacts faster than most. He might not necessarily be able to always take them out, but with enough planning, he might. And Deathstroke had like this test done on him, like, and it means he like can use more of his brain than the average person. He heals fast. He's at peak human condition. Deathstroke has definitely taken down like an entire Justice League team basically single-handedly before. He can basically go up against the Teen Titans single-handedly if he needs to. So you'd say, what can he do against the Green Lantern? Sneak up on him, grab Hal's fist, and use his own willpower to override the ring, things like that. knock him out with gas. I don't know. He's very capable. He's very capable. I didn't know that, but that sounds hilarious. Yeah. Hal himself isn't necessarily super powered, and he doesn't run around with like a shield up all the time. So sometimes he gets knocked out. DC and IDW is going to team up. This is actual sort of promotional artwork by, I think, Saga's team or something like that. But yeah, so DC announced that they're teaming up with IDW and Saga for a Sonic/Justice League crossover. Team Sonic and the Justice League will team up in a 5-issue comic book series published by DC, written by Ian Flynn, who's apparently the person writing the Sonic the Hedgehog comic. And yeah, they had a bunch of promotional images. I grabbed Sonic, of course, and he's the Flash. That makes sense. You'd think he'd be Superman or Batman. No, he's got to be the fastest guy. So that makes sense. They put for Superman, they used Knuckles. They put Tails in the role of Cyborg. For Wonder Woman, they took Amy, and this is Shadow the Hedgehog as Batman. Makes sense. Could be fun, especially for kids. Probably not for me, but I don't dislike Sonic. It's just probably not for me. But it might be for others. That's going to come out in March 2025, monthly, all the way through July. Yeah. So, you may have seen this get talked about on social media if you follow any comic book news. It sounds like big news. Functionally, I don't think it's really that big, but it is a change. So, a U.S. court has ruled that Marvel and DC no longer have the trademark on the word superhero. That was reported by Reuters on Thursday. A U.S. trademark office tribunal canceled a set of trademarks that the two companies held together for many decades, superhero and superheroes. And this was at the request of a London-based comic book artist. He had sued in U.S. court that word was not being defended and that it should be basically a public domain term. Specifically, I'm talking about S.J. Richards' Super Babies Limited. They challenged the trademark. Neither Marvel nor DC responded at all by the required May deadline. That means effectively they abandoned the trademark. They didn't even bother to fight it. They didn't hire lawyers or anything. They were just like, yeah, fine. Everybody uses superhero anyway, so we're not going to fight that one. And they shouldn't. It's ridiculous that they even got it in the first place, to be honest. Oh, I guess I don't have anything more to say. Like, what would the fallout here be? I don't think I've seen in decades Marvel or DC block any comic books from using the term superhero. So this was just somebody just putting it on the record that, like, hey, this trademark isn't being actively defended or anything, so anybody should be able to use that term. Actually, I don't think that they ever went for supervillains. No, I think that they just got superhero and superheroes. I'd have to double check. Don't hold me to that, but I don't think that they ever bothered to do that. It just doesn't get used as much, really. But yeah, I don't think they did. Good question. West Coast Avengers is adding a villain to the team. This guy. Who's this guy? Shouldn't look familiar to anybody. Name may sound familiar. This shouldn't look familiar. We'll go into it. So, in November, Marvel has already announced they're relaunching their West Coast Avengers title, and it's going to feature a new character. Everybody else we've seen is an existing character, but it's going to feature a new character, a former henchman to villains named Blue Bolt. And Blue Bolt was the name of a Golden Age superhero that actually had a pretty long-running title, but he's in the public domain now. Nobody kept Blue Bolt going. It's not really based on that. They just took the name because nobody's using it. At least I don't think so. It could surprise us and say that there's something related to the Golden Age hero, but I don't think so. The comic is by writer Jerry Duggan, artist Danny Kim, and previous art we've seen the team. We've seen Iron Man, Spider-Woman, War Machine, Firestar. It also has Ultron in there, and Ultron has always been a huge Avengers enemy, but there is history of Ultron merging with his creator, Dr. Hank Pym, Ant-Man, and maybe that's made a version of Ultron that wants to be redeemed. So, yeah, what does Jerry Duggan say about this guy? He said to Marvel, "The Avengers have seen a lot of rough customers over the years. Hell, even Deadpool and Wolverine have been Avengers at different points. But the Avengers haven't seen a bigger, I don't know what, bitch, than Blue Bolt. Probably not bitch. He's mean, he's self-centered, narcissistic, and he's only on the Avengers West Coast squad to shave time off his sentence. And wait until you find out what he's in jail for. Yeesh." Well, it's still a Marvel comic, so I don't think it's going to be anything too offensive. But we'll see. I'm just working on some artwork while I do this, because if there's time, I'm going to do some inking tonight. Okay. Ultron 12. The promo artwork there is not by Danny Kim, to be clear. That's by Todd Knock. But it's quite the look. It does make sense for a henchman, I guess. Oh, you don't like that? I think Jerry Duggan's quite a good writer. There's been some great books that he's done in the past. I certainly think his Deadpool work was strong. Rob, how are you? Let's see. Mark 12 wanted to be the good son in early issues of the first West Coast Avengers ongoing. That does ring a bell, Rob, and I had completely forgotten. I had been thinking when people said Ultron 12 that it was a more recent thing, but I guess I do remember that there was one version that sort of came out different. I forgot about that. I don't remember it super well. Yeah, that's what he's in jail for. He sold tomatoes without a vendor's license, and he ripped tags off of mattresses before purchasing them. Very illegal. Hellboy, the Crooked Man. Apparently it's going straight to video. Video on demand these days. Not getting a theatrical release, it looks like. So Amazon has this. You can go to Amazon right now, and it's got a video on demand release date for October 7th. And that indicates that the movie would not be getting a theatrical release because that's 7 days away. So I think we'd know if it was getting a theatrical release at the same time. I'm surprised. I'm a little surprised. It might still be good. I don't know. But it's not getting a theatrical release. The movie stars Jack Kesey in the title role. It follows the character. It's based on a great comic, by the way. A great Hellboy comic. Hellboy gets stranded in a small Appalachian town, 1950s setting. Town is like basically infested with witches. It's and the Crooked Man himself is a really creepy design, drawn by Richard Corbin. Really effective shot. It got a theatrical release in other countries. Released in the UK. No, I don't think it could do worse than those two movies. It's got to be better. I don't know what country you're in, Shin Matthias, but yeah, here in the US, doesn't seem to be getting a theatrical release, or if it does, it's going to be really, really small. It's definitely not a wide release, or we'd all have seen ads for it. So, is what it is. Is it the same production company that's working on Red Sonja? I don't know. It's got to be better than Madam Web. Madam Web is pretty bad. Uruguay. Got it. Well, I don't know. But yeah, 1 week. It'll be on Amazon, and I don't know if I want to pay $20 to see it at home. That seems like a lot to see a movie at home, but maybe. I do like to keep up with comic book movies just out of curiosity. Speaking of just comic book movie type stuff, a bunch of Batman actors and a relative of one of the creators showed up for the Hollywood star reveal. So Batman got a Hollywood star this past week. A few notable figures there. We've got Burt Ward here. He was Robin in the 60s Batman show. And we've got 4 voice actors. Jason O'Mara, Troy Baker, Hamish Linklater, and Diedrich Bader. And finally, excuse me, I forgot. Jim Lee, president of DC Comics, was there. No surprise. But also this lady here on the right, that's Athena Finger. She's the granddaughter of Batman's co-creator, Bill Finger. Yeah. There's a great documentary on Hulu. It's also a book. It's called Bill the Boy Wonder. And a comic book historian basically just really, really wanted to fight for Bill Finger to get a co-creator credit at DC. But the only way you could do that is if he had a living relative, and you can't go past a grandchild to claim rights on something. But the problem was everybody thought Bill Finger didn't have kids. But he did, actually. He did have a son. They were kind of estranged, I guess, but his son also died kind of young from, I think, cancer, but his son had a daughter, Athena, and this guy was able to say, like, hey, you have a legal right to, be paid by DC to get your grandfather's legacy secured, and Athena did it, and she's been doing a lot to travel, go to conventions, and speak at events to talk about Bill Finger's legacy. And that includes this. And I think, like, in general, it's like, a star for Batman. Well, wouldn't it be cooler to see a star for some of the creators that worked on him? It would, but at the same time, this is a step, for decades and decades, like over 70 years. It was just Batman created by Bob Kane. And these days, if you ever see Batman, it says created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And it's nice. It's nice that Bill Finger is getting that kind of credit because he created a lot of the mythology. He created a lot. No, that's not Jim in the costume. He's somewhere there, like not in these photos, but yeah, they had obviously a guy in the costume. Oh, really? I've got an episode about Bob Kane, and it talks a bit about that. It talks mostly about Bob Kane, but it does talk a bit about Bill Finger and everything Bill Finger had done and how his legacy finally got this legal recognition. I want to say back in 2015 or something. I don't know. Maybe it was longer ago than that now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Athena's doing some great work there. And so that's really nice. So anyway, my point of mentioning this was a little bit less to talk about Batman's star and a little bit more to talk about the legacy of Bill Finger, a co-creator that not everybody knows about. I'll keep moving because I've got some comics I want to talk about. It's a great documentary. Bill the Boy Wonder. Really, really good. Oops. All of the news popped up here and I didn't finish editing it, but that's okay. I can talk through it. So The Beauty is this comic, and it's going to get a TV adaptation. I've got Ryan Murphy, and apparently here I was going to put in his credits. He does American Horror Story among a bunch of other shows. He does tons of shows at FX especially. But he's going to adapt this 2016 graphic novel, The Beauty, into a TV series at FX. The comic itself, you can hopefully see their names up here, co-written by Jeremy Hahn and Jason A. Hurley and illustrated by Jeremy Hahn. It's a story of there's an STD, and if you get it, it actually makes you look beautiful and young, but it also kills you eventually. And there's detectives hunting this down because it's deadly. And there's the implication it may have been designed by the government, that this may be a designed STD. So the show just got picked straight up to series. Didn't like just get a pilot like a lot of shows got, or at least used to. 11 episodes under Murphy's new development deal with Disney. Now that Disney owns all the Fox stuff, including FX, goes into production around November, and it's got stars Evan Peters. He's in everything Ryan Murphy does. Anthony Ramos. He's been in a ton of movies and stuff lately. Twisters, that last Transformers live action movie. He's good. Jeremy Pope. Not as familiar with him, I'm afraid. And Ashton Kutcher. So I'm sure that that's what we're all going to go see because Ashton's in it. Yeah. Most things will eventually kill you. I think that this is a little faster. Yeah, thank you. I was actually trying to remember the name. I should have put it in the notes. But Mark Tyler Nobleman is the guy that wrote both the book, Bill the Boy Wonder, and made the documentary. Mark Tyler Nobleman. So he did a real service to the comics industry by securing Bill Finger's legacy, but it wouldn't have been possible without Athena's work. What else do I have? A few more pieces. Image is hinting at a bunch of creators for Ice Cream Man because they keep posting these images. It has ice cream and a creator's name, but it doesn't say anything else. They shared these names. Kelly Sue DeConnick, her husband Matt Fraction, both huge writers, obviously, and Patton Oswalt. He writes a bunch of comics. So this seems to imply that there's going to be an Ice Cream Man horror anthology with a bunch of guests. That's what it seems to be hinting at to me. The book, if you haven't read it, it's a really good horror comic. It debuted back in 2018. Creators W. Maxwell Prince, Martin Marazzo, and Chris O'Halloran. And of course, I talked about this in a previous episode, but if you missed that, there was a previous post by Image, and it featured Grant Morrison's name with that background. A Vermont comic book shop owner passed away earlier this year, but apparently she had an absolutely massive personal comics collection that is about to go to auction. I'll give you some more details. So, Christine Farrell was her name. She was the owner of both Earth Prime Comics and also Quarterstaff Games. Those are both in Burlington, Vermont. Well, she passed away last April, age 73, and she left behind a massive comics collection. She is believed, it hasn't all been looked through yet, but she's believed to have at one point owned at least one copy of every single book DC Comics ever published from 1938 forward. Just massive. Here's a quote. "This is going to be a market-changing sale," said Jordan Lewis Van Dyke, the manager at Farrell's stores when she died. "I don't know that there's been a collection this wide in the history of comic collections with this many key issues and highly valuable books." Wow. But, just to be clear, the collection is going to be sold through Heritage Auctions October 22nd through the 25th, and it's going to be able to be seen on the site starting October 7th. The one thing that Heritage always does is they basically get all the books graded by CGC. They've been accused of potentially manipulating the market, like getting high bids just to drive up other bids. I say alleged is all, because there's nothing I've seen that's proved that that's what they're doing. I mean, that would be illegal. That would be market manipulation. But there's been those rumors chasing Heritage for a long time. They're definitely still the biggest auction site for things like comics and comics-related memorabilia. But, yeah, we'll see. But I agree with Jordan Lewis Van Dyke. If it's as big as it's alleged, that many key books going onto the market, I think it could like drive certain sort of mid-range books down potentially because there's other better copies out there. And then it may actually increase the very highest end of certain rare key books because it'll set a new record for you know, something like, I don't know, All-Star Comics #1, something like that. I better protect myself. It's alleged. But yeah, apparently she had an absolutely massive collection. Bad Idea Comics is giving away a free digital comic. If it's free, it's for me. I wanted to share that with you guys. So they released a digital copy of their Planet Death comic. It's unfinished. It's black and white, no text. It's not all the pages, but they released a lot of it. They gave this away physically at this past San Diego Comic-Con, the beginning of the summer, or middle, whatever you want to call July. And the free comic also has all sorts of supplementary material. It's got interviews. It's got previews of other Bad Idea comics by people like David Lapham. So I shared it because I looked at the pages and the art was incredible, to be honest. Bad Idea issued a press release. I'm just keeping one piece of it here that's relevant. This is a sneak preview of the monumental new comic event from blockbuster screenwriter Derek Kolstad, John Wick motion picture franchise, New York Times bestselling writer Robert Venditti, Superman 78, Green Lantern, and visionary artist Tomas Giorello, Star Wars Conan, and it's yours for the reading. And there's the link. So if you're curious, you can always, I guess, freeze screenshot or freeze, pause, whatever, and get that in, and you can see a PDF of this. But the art is really damn good, I have to admit. I've never picked up a Bad Idea comic before, but that is a good crew. And the sci-fi premise is kind of cool. It's like it's in the future, like, you know, super soldiers up against alien monsters, and like a guy's whole squad gets wiped out and he has to sneak behind enemy lines to secure a weapon and then get home. It looks good. It's simple, but it looks good. Really loving trash movie bonanza to get in the fall mood. Any plans for Argento's Demons or The Church? I won't say no, not necessarily definitive, but Jim and I do have some cool things coming in October, including a movie whose critical opinion has changed over the years, and we're going to have a very, very special guest. I think that we've got some fun stuff planned for October. And we've also recorded one that's not really October themed, but should probably be up within a week. Yeah. I've wanted to see The Substance. I had tickets to see it last Friday, but I had a live stream that went a little bit long. And I've been working ever since, so I haven't had time. But I've heard really good things about that movie, so I hope I get to see it. Got some more news. Juanjo, am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. Juanjo Guarnido won the 2024 Sergio Aragonés Award. So, the Lakes International Comics Art Festival announced that Juanjo Guarnido, and I'll just mention that he is the artist on Black Sad, which is a book I've talked up, looks incredible. He's the recipient of the Sergio Aragonés International Award for Excellence in Comic Art. Juanjo was presented with the award during the opening night event of the festival's weekend-long celebration in Bonus on Windermere. Maybe I pronounced that right. I don't know. I've never been there. And the awards were established in 2017 by the National Cartoonist Society. That's a really big professional organization of cartoonists and comic book illustrators and stuff worldwide. So, yeah, very cool. Congrats to Juanjo. I just figured, hey, you know what? No matter what, it's an excuse to mention Black Sad. If you haven't read it, it is just a beautiful comic. Juanjo Guarnido is Spanish, and he got a job working at Disney, animating movies like Hercules and maybe Hunchback of Notre Dame, I think Tarzan. And while he was doing that, he was always sort of working to break into comics, and he did Black Sad. So now he's got a really gorgeous style, super detailed. It does have like anthropomorphic animals, but they look incredible. They look incredible. Yeah, It's a really gorgeous book. If you haven't read it, it comes out in like big one-shot editions or graphic novels, whatever you want to call it. And Black Sat is the name of like this cat private eye detective. It's a noirish story. You know, it's in seedy places in New York and New Orleans and stuff like that. Really, really cool. The J's in Juanjo are pronounced as the WH in when. Both of them are Juanjo. Juanjo. Okay. Great book. I think I've done a Comic Tropes episode about it now that I think of it. I do like that comic a lot. Fans gathered in Seoul for the first Webtoons convention. And I've got some pictures here that were featured in the Korea Times with an article and photos by, and I don't know Korean names, so I can't really pronounce it well. Baek Byung-yul? Sorry. So this happened this past weekend. It was co-organized by the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism and the Korea Creative Content Agency. This is the first event since, you may remember, we talked about this on the news in this show. Back in January, Korea said they wanted to push the development of Webtoons, good for the economy. They wanted to push it as a cultural thing. They wanted to push that they've got a history of developing this new way of looking at comics, and that, you know, they've got some of the most popular ones in the world. It was a 4-day event. They had 16 different Webtoons companies that had panels and, you know, pavilions and booths, and they had awards for prominent titles like Solo Leveling and The Great. So just another example of Webtoons in general continuing to grow and become really dominant. It's because it's a good way to read comics if you're on a computer or your phone. The problem, I think, is just figuring out the right way to monetize it properly so that the artists and writers and colorists and letters and so on are also getting properly compensated. I think that that's the trick, because we're talking many, many millions of views for some of these comics. But some of these people have to work really long, hard hours like any cartoonist does. Last piece of news I'll have. These two men put on a pair of Halloween masks, including this one, to rob a comic shop this week. And as you can see, it didn't go great for them. So two men in cheap masks. One was Michael Myers from Halloween. One was the nun mask from The Town. Broke into Tennessee comic book store Grand Adventures Comics and Games, and they stole $8,000 worth of Magic the Gathering cards. However, Philip Clodfelter, 42, and Kelly Garner, 64, were arrested after cops pulled over their car due to erratic driving, and they saw both the masks and the cards in the back seat. So, they didn't get to celebrate their ill-gotten gains. That's not nice. That's not nice. You could, yeah. I hate it when people break into comic shops that operate on pretty small margins. I love it when they get caught. Dude, I'm scrolling through the article and it like first mentioned that there was a 42-year-old and a 64-year-old. And I saw this guy on the left and I go, oh, he must be the 64-year-old. Then I saw this guy and went, oh, he's the 42-year-old. Yeah, that is a little rough. Oh, it is what it is. So, now it's time to look at some comical books. Some books of the comics variety by throwing on an extra camera, which I'm going to plug in now. I didn't want to kill the battery while I was doing the interviews and news stuff. Let me zoom in a little bit. Get it nice and centered. That should work. And we'll add another camera. There were a lot of comics that came out this week. A lot. Okay. We'll get that Mountain Dew out of there. I don't think that that's important. Oh, this is what I've been sketching for like a cover. And if there's time, I'll ink it. But my friend bought one of these variant, like sketch covers. And so I've mapped out a Leonardo here. Basically, I drew it on a separate paper so that I didn't make a mistake. I didn't want to risk ruining his cover. I'm not that good. And then I've light boxed it onto here. So I was just touching that up a little bit while we were working. But I'll put that aside and we'll look at the comics that came out this week. Yeah. A life of crime ages you. The weed of crime bears bitter fruit. I think that was the Shadow. I don't know. Some of these I'll go through kind of quick for reviews. This is the second issue of Wolverine Revenge by Jonathan Hickman and Greg Capullo. And it's the red band edition. So if you've got sensitive eyes, get out of the room now. Look, this isn't set in any specific continuity. And what that allows them to do is kill off all sorts of heroes and stuff. And it just means Wolverine has lots of anger and lots of motivation for getting revenge. The whole world has had all of its electronics shut down because when Magneto died, he sent out an EMP blast, an electromagnetic pulse that fried all the circuitry on Earth. But how can they get past that? Well, there is a mutant that has a knack for working on this stuff. Forge. He can create anything, right? So he can build a device to bring electricity and power back. But it requires, Wolverine to get a MacGuffin. And the first thing they'll do to have him get that MacGuffin for some reason is get Magneto's helmet. Why would Wolverine need Magneto's helmet? Maybe you're already thinking of why he would need it. Because he's going up against Mastermind, who usually controls brains. Anyway, this is a blast. It seems like Greg Capullo is having a lot of fun drawing this stuff. And Jonathan Hickman just gives us one of the gnarliest fights I've seen between Wolverine and Sabretooth. Sabretooth, at one point, picks up Wolverine's motorcycle, gets it started, and just pushes the wheel against Wolverine's face. I thought that was pretty damn cool. But, yeah, so this is just the first of several fights that Wolverine is going to have to get through. He's got to get through Colossus has switched sides. He's a bad guy. He's got to get past Mastermind and Sabretooth. He's got to get past Deadpool, Omega Red. Could be so far so fun. It's a revenge story. It's not the deepest. All I can tell you is that it's a badass revenge story. It's a badass revenge story. Yeah, first Capullo book in decades. Absolutely. Yeah, he was working on Quasar and then X-Force around 92, but then Todd McFarlane snatched him up to work on Spawn for many, many years. Well, there's a bigger reason than just looking cool, but yeah. Speaking of mutant stuff, this has been my favorite of the X-Men relaunches, and it continues to be. So what do I have to say about the Gail Simone, David Marquez X-Men book that I haven't said already? Because I've talked about how I really like the art. I've talked about how I was pleasantly surprised that it was a blend of X-Men and New Mutants. I'll say that there's something else that I like about this, that the X-Men era that I loved, which was the Chris Claremont written era, had, and that's subplots. Like, for instance, in this, it's only issue 3, and Wolverine is leaving for some reason. I don't think he's leaving the book. I really don't. But for some reason, he leaves. And Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee, and Nightcrawler have to train these 4 new characters. I'll also say I appreciate that they're giving these characters new powers. It's not just strength or flight or talk to animals. Well, actually, one of them is talk to animals. But anyway, they each get their background fleshed out about, and it's nice to meet new characters in the Marvel universe that aren't just derivative of an existing character. That's nice. We don't get this enough. Jitter, for instance, is from Korea, and what she can do is she can basically be an expert at any sort of thing, but only for like 1 minute, and then that it ends. So she could be really good at Muay Thai kickboxing, but only for a minute. She can move pretty damn fast, as fast as a person could move, but only for like that 1 minute. And then she has to switch to something else. And I don't know if there's a cooldown period or anything like that yet. We're still getting to know these characters. Ransom has a really dark story. I won't like spoil all of that for you. There's Calico, and she has like a relationship with her horse Ember. It can like grow wings and fly, but there seems to be more to it than that. She said in last issue that she's not a mutant, so I don't know what her story is. And finally, there's Hotaru. What's his name? His mutant power is that he died when he was being born, and then like came back to life, and then he died a bunch more. And basically it's given him a connection with the afterlife. So he terrifies Nightcrawler. And that's kind of a fun evolution, because Nightcrawler used to like be like the charming X-Man that would scare people because of his demonic appearance. But this guy terrifies Nightcrawler. And I'll stop there before I go into the other subplots, but it moves at a good pace. It's got a good blend of action and sort of melodrama. Rogue is the centerpiece of this. And Rogue is, I guess, developed into a really interesting character. She's married to Gambit. I don't know when any of that happened. All I know is, Rogue used to be a supervillain. She joined the X-Men and got rehabilitated. And she stole the powers of Captain Marvel so she can fly and is really strong. But this is showing me a really interesting, sensitive side to her, a caring side that I really like. Oh, that's true. Maybe the horse is the mutant. I didn't even think about that, Rob. That actually could be. Yeah, the mutant name is Death Dream. Death Dream. Calico, yeah, kind of like the cats. I just wasn't reading X-Men at the time, so I didn't see their wedding issue. Was it interrupted by supervillains? Those things usually are. Look, I guess I can't necessarily say yet in 3 issues that it's doing something that you've never seen before in comics, but what it's doing is blending everything really well. It's not boring. It's got the action. It's got the character work. It's got subplots, including those of like the villains and what they're planning on doing. There's more than one villain actually, and I like it. It seems to tie into Charles Xavier history in a new way. Yeah. 2018 or 2019. That was a long time ago, actually. Death Dream like a nightmare. Are you implying that maybe it's the villain Nightmare in disguise? I don't think that's the case, but there could be that could be a good personal villain for this kid. We'll keep going because there's a lot of comics to look at this week. Ultimate Spider-Man. I can't believe we're already at issue 9 actually of the Ultimate Universe, because this probably reads faster when you're reading it in, say, trade paperback format, every like 6 issues at a time. This one is paced a bit more leisurely than X-Men, but it also has less to tie it in to other books that could be going on. In other words, like sometimes I feel like books in the Marvel universe have to be paced quickly so that the writer can get their story out before they're obligated to do a crossover. And with the Ultimate Universe, they're not obligated to do that. I really like the way that Marco Cicchetto draws Mary Jane Watson. Maybe she has a little too much eye makeup. I don't know. But, she looks like a believable young mom that's still like super hot, and you're like, good for her and Peter to finally, have a reality where they are happily married and have kids. As far as the plot, we're moving forward with the technology of the suits that both Spider-Man and Green Goblin wear. And they finally start going up against the Sinister Six, specifically Black Cat, who you'd think wouldn't necessarily be a threat, but this is early Spider-Man, and much bigger threat than you'd assume. Great art, though. Really, really cool. There's a couple things that Marco Cicchetto does in terms of small details that I really like. Let me see if I can find a good example. I guess I just sort of like how he draws the sort of skin-tight armor that's underneath Green Goblin's main armor. I don't know, it's not a lot of line work, but it just implies a certain texture, and I really like it. And he's really good at cities and architecture. I don't know, it's a good blend of sort of hard angles and really dynamic, engaging poses. They contrast well together. I'm enjoying this book. I'm enjoying this book a lot. Yeah, these two are great Marvel comics. It's really fun to be able to enjoy some superhero stuff right now. But here's one that's a little more special and unique, is Feral, by writer Tony Fleecs, artist Trish Forstner. Essentially, it's about a rabies plague among house cats, or really among all animals, but it focuses on house cats as the main characters. And this issue specifically is told from the point of view of Patch, a character who has been infected with the plague, and he's trying to get back home and help like his fellow pets that he was in the home with. He's fighting, like a rabid dog in the woods, and he's hallucinating, so he's an unreliable narrator. But he has these memories that help us understand all the characters. And I don't know, I guess I don't have anything new to say. Speaking of contrasts in Ultimate X-Men, the contrast here is Trish Forstner drawing in a really, really clean and confident animated cartoony style, and then contrasting that with a really dark story by Tony Fleecs. I really like this. Oh yeah, you care about these characters. That's what makes this kind of horrific, is just the danger that they're in. And Patch isn't dead yet. I don't know that there's really a cure. What's scary is he thinks he's going to maybe help Elsie and stuff like that, but he's rabid right now, and he's closing in on the uninfected, so he could actually be very, very dangerous. It hits really hard. Feral is a special book right now. Here's an unexpected surprise. I don't really keep up too much with a lot of the DC characters, but I've always had a little bit of an affection for Lobo because I read the Lobo Paramilitary Christmas special back in the day, drawn by Simon Beasley. It's so anarchic. It's so fun. And I'll tell you something, I haven't really seen that version of Lobo in a while, but Kyle Hotz, the artist, and Kyle Starks, the writer, they get it. Lobo is just the worst. He's just the worst. He ruins the lives of everyone he comes across. Kind of like Gru the Barbarian, but Gru is, he doesn't mean anyone harm. He's just a brute, and he makes mistakes and he has bad luck. But Lobo brings everyone misery, and you can't trust him. And the joke is really on how people that should be smarter keep giving him a chance, like trying to work with him, and it never works out well for them. So anyway, he's been stuck on a backwards, like, planet with no technology for like 6 years. And he gets offered a contract as a bounty hunter. And he's like, yeah, I'll take anything to get me off the planet. And all that does is put him up against all the badasses who've tried to take his place while he's been gone, including Murder Crotch Slaughterface. It's really funny if you like dark humor. Isn't unexpected the definition of a surprise? Maybe so. Maybe so. Oh yeah, it was so good. I'm glad that you liked it too. Yeah, maybe it doesn't show up super well, like in just a little square, but these guys are a really good fit for Lobo. They get everything about him that's important. He's not a deep character. Lobo has one or two tiny redeeming qualities. He always honors a contract to its letter. And he likes one or two things. He likes his bike. He likes his dog. He likes these space dolphins. In this, he likes this tiny little jelly orb that he gets as a sidekick. And the thing I like most is that he's not necessarily super smart, but he is cunning and clever. He goes up against a guy that can control his mind, and the guy has like Lobo stab himself and burn himself. So Lobo decides to just give himself a concussion so that he can go up against a guy that can control minds. It's funny. I think it's funny. It's probably not quite R-rated, but it's at least a hard PG-13 type of a comic. I thought it was funny. Buy this comic or a child might see it. Okay, sold. Never heard of that one. The Lobo Authority Jingle Hell Special. Huh, okay. There was a lot of publicity for Knights versus Samurai. Published by Image, specifically overseen by Todd McFarlane as a creative director, but the script is by David Dastmalchian, the actor. He's written some other comics, like Count Crowley. Actually, he's a co-writer on. This one he's the only writer on. And he's talked in interviews about how passionate he is about the idea. And the idea is fun. The art is by Fede Mele. I hope I'm getting that name right. And it's at least serviceable, possibly a little better than serviceable. But I do think that there's a lot of weird panel structure that doesn't always necessarily need to be this hectic and overlapping. I don't know that really led my eye in a certain way. There's also lots of sort of medium and small shots of like character heads as compared to maybe just like give me like one big establishing shot or give me one big dynamic action shot. That's something that, I was talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, and I was saying, like what's special about his artwork. And it's that sometimes Marco Cicchetto knows to use like 2/3 of the page for like a really cool shot. Or, even when I was showing like a fight scene earlier, there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels here, but the panel with the biggest action definitely gets the most space. And I would say in this, Fede Mele, for instance, has a guy kill a dragon. It's a really important element of this guy's character, but these aren't bad, but they're like a little small. I would think that this shot or this shot should have been a lot bigger. One of them, the story of Knights versus Samurai is this really young guy just became knighted, and a duke sends him to, it isn't called Japan, but it's Japan, because they've killed basically all the dragons in the England area, and they just got a report that there are monsters out in the Japan island. So they go sailing north, like over Norway and Finland and Russia. They go that way, like through the cold. And it's okay. You know, there's some fun stuff there. I like when like a bunch of the people on the ship had to fight this giant monster. But again, I think that this monster should actually be even bigger. Like the panel size is good, but I don't know. It's a good panel for showing us the size of the monster versus the size of the ship. That's fairly important. But I would have liked to have seen a little more of the monster. Oh, also this page, I remember I read it like this and went up here. And then I realized that this is actually a 2-page spread meant to be read all the way across. And that wasn't super obvious to me. I think the thing that threw me was that this second panel basically cuts off at the end of the page. So I went down here. That's where my eye went. But it's meant to go across. So there should have been a decision there. There should have been a decision. This harpoon is like cutting into this panel. So it sort of guides your eye back down here, but you miss this panel. I'm not trying to beat up on it, but it wasn't the smoothest read for me. I like the premise. I like the premise of a world that has monsters that are both Eastern and Western. I like the idea of people that are knights and pirates going up against samurai. But I'll tell you something else. Guess what? This is the last page of the issue. That isn't like this should have been like almost the whole page. This should have somehow been paced so that this was a huge reveal of samurai. It just isn't paced super well. But the art itself isn't bad. It's just the storytelling. I hate to be a jerk. Didn't work for me. Batman the Long Halloween. It's a really good book, the original. Batman the Long Halloween is a really, really solid mystery. You know, who's the holiday killer? Basically, Batman spends a whole year trying to figure out who the killer is. And the answer is like probably more complex than you would think. So, one of the best collaborations, in my opinion, by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Tim Sale is no longer with us, but I guess that the two of them had an idea for a third Batman story they wanted to do together. And they've got Eduardo Risso to draw it. While he does not draw like Tim Sale, I think he's a damn good fit for this story. I wouldn't have necessarily wanted a sequel to such a good comic, but they already did Dark Victory. I think Dark Victory was fine, but not as interesting as The Long Halloween. It was just fine. It wasn't bad in any way. It was just that it didn't add to it that much. And in fact, I'll be honest, I think that this third book, it references that some of that stuff happened, but I don't think it's as important as the stuff that happened in the first, in the first series. So, yeah, the title is a bit unwieldy, to be clear. Batman the Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. The sequel was just Dark Victory. You know, now I get the branding of wanting to have The Long Halloween because that's what people kind of know, but then to add another subtitle when The Long Halloween is already a subtitle, it's a little weird. It's going to be a 10-issue series. I'm glad that there's some art from Tim Sale that they can use for like the covers. I'm a big fan of Eduardo Risso. Some of the stuff he's done in the last couple years, like the Sergeant Rock versus Zombies book by Eduardo Risso and Bruce Campbell, was actually surprisingly cool. I've really been enjoying Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso reteaming. They did 100 Bullets. Now they're doing the Blood Brothers Mother. And look at how different, by the way, some of this art is by the same artist. Let me feature that, because on the left here, Eduardo Risso is doing like the colors and everything too. He's obviously using like, you know, watercolor or gouache, something like that. And on this, he's drawing in stark black and whites, and there's somebody digitally coloring it. But I honestly think both styles work depending on the story. This is a Western. Like, nature is very important. The environment is very important. And those delicate sort of textures that you get with watercolors really add to the ambiance. Whereas a Batman story at night in Gotham, I think you want like deeper shadows and a more of a contrast, right? A contrast between the line art and the color. I think it works actually pretty darn well and shows that Eduardo Risso can have a very recognizable style, but it's still fairly versatile depending on the story. There's some great stuff that goes on in this in terms of, a copycat killer emerging and what's going on with Harvey Dent and his wife Gilda, who are both pretty dangerous people. His severance package issue in Spider-Man's Tangled Web is amazing storytelling. I never read that, actually. Risso brought the pain as usual. He did a few issues of the new Torpedo as well. In some ways, you might look at this and go, boy, do I want to see another sequel with only one half of the creative team? And that's fair. But so far, for a first issue, this lays out a pretty interesting murder mystery. And it gets more personal, I would argue, than the original, because Jim Gordon, Commissioner Gordon's son, gets kidnapped on Halloween, in addition to some of the other stuff that's going on here. That makes it a more personal story than Batman trying to stop, crime families and supervillains from killing each other. It's really cool. And I'm hit and miss with Jeff Loeb. Sometimes I really like his work and sometimes I'm ambivalent about it. But so far, this is a really strong start. I almost didn't pick it up, but I'm glad I did. I really am. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of Batman books out there, and I can't pick them all up. But I am glad I picked this one up so far. We'll see how the mystery goes. But I think overall, my favorite Batman stories are mysteries. Mystery is a very hard genre to write. Crime in general, I think, is a very hard genre to write, where you might have a reveal at the end, and even if you can't figure it out, it still has to play fair with all the clues that you've given, and you can't have the reader get ahead of you guessing where it's going, and you can't be so far ahead that the storytelling is incomprehensible. A lot of people will say humor is the toughest to write, and that might be true for some people. I think other people just have a natural good sense of humor and can bring that. I think mystery is the hardest to write, because it's like a puzzle box that you're putting together. How you're going to pace the story and when you're going to have certain reveals, or how you're going to reveal information without tipping your hand and telling people hey, pay attention to this. This piece of information is really key. You have to almost hide that information. And then within that, of course, you have to have texture for the characters. Make sure that they have personality that comes across so that you care about them while they're delivering exposition that moves the story forward. But I also just wanted to highlight this 1-2-page splash of Batman and Robin jumping down through the buildings, chasing Catwoman. I just think it looks great. And kudos for Eduardo Risso for being brave enough to just black out all the buildings instead of add lights in and stuff like that. Wasn't necessary. And if it's not necessary, maybe you don't always need to knock yourself out. It still looks fantastic. It looks great. Yeah, I agree, Circuitron. You have to sort of work backwards to get a mystery, like when you're actually the one writing it. But it's tricky. That was your fave page. I recommend it. You like Dark Victory better. Interesting. That's fair. I didn't think it was bad. It didn't hit me the same way. There was no there was no reveal or twist to Dark Victory that hit as hard as the stuff I learned about, Harvey Dent and Gilda Dent. And well, I guess you did get some of that about Gilda in Dark Victory, didn't you? Excuse me. But still, like I just felt like the original Long Halloween hit bigger. He's one of my favorites, and I think he just continues a great tradition of Argentina pumping out some incredible cartoonists over the years. I remember discovering Risso just before 100 Bullets, and I loved 100 Bullets, but just before it, I'd read his book Boy Vampire, and I didn't care that much about the story, but I remember really being into the artwork. Yeah. Really cool. Moon Man. I've said in the past that the only thing about like Moon Man that was like sort of I wasn't feeling as much as I wanted to was the actual storytelling by the artist. I feel like this issue actually made a lot of improvements. Like this is more or less a talking head scene, a type of a heist type of a scene, and it actually read pretty darn well to me. And then later, when the titular character Ramon comes in to rescue these people, yeah, this gets crazy and hectic. I just sort of gave into it and just went with it. And I don't know. I really liked the sort of street art style of these action scenes in this particular issue. This one worked for me better than the previous three, I would say. So Moon Man hasn't quite been my favorite comic by Kyle Higgins, but I'm still enjoying it enough that I want to see where it's going. I think I always have a certain amount of hesitancy when I go into a book that I think is a vanity project. And I specifically mean when somebody from Hollywood works on a comic. I get a little nervous when Keanu Reeves works on Berserker. What's coming up? I think Arcbound is the upcoming one with I love this actor. He played Bane, he played Venom. Like who am I thinking of? All of a sudden he was in so many great movies. That great villain in the Leonardo DiCaprio Bear movie. I can't think of any of it. Well, anyway, Arcbound. I get nervous about it, but and this one's got Kid Cudi, Scott Mescudi, as the co-writer, and you're like, well, clearly Ramon is like designed to be a character that he could play in a movie or something. So I get like my haunches up, like, oh no, like this is a vanity project. It might not be good. Thanks everybody. Yeah, Tom Hardy. I think Tom Hardy's a great actor, by the way, and I'll try Arcbound because I also like the other writers that are working on it, Frank Thierry and Scott Snyder. But I go like, is it just meant to be a concept that we're putting out there? Is Berserker just a concept so that people can go, oh, okay, we'll fund the movie, Keanu? That's the stuff I wonder about. I wonder about it with this. Like, oh, is this just designed to get the movie made as compared to being a work in and of itself? But I like it. I can't honestly say that I love it yet. It would probably need a little bit of a twist or a turn, or maybe even a few more characters in it. There aren't that many characters in it. It needs something else. It needs just another level to it that for me to enjoy and engage in. But it is good and it is fun. And this was the first issue that I really got a blast out of the art, and I thought that it made sense. So. If it only takes 4 issues for somebody to get their storytelling from a point where I'm like a little confused to like fully engaged, that's pretty fast. That's pretty fast. I think I've said enough good things about Saga that I don't need to go into too much detail about it, but I will say this is issue 69, and this was like the cover art. I think that Fiona Staples knew what she was doing more or less with that. I think that that's supposed to be a bit evocative of something. I don't know. This was actually a really sweet story that made me like have some hope for Squire, the robot son that's been adopted by Alana. He's been hurting himself, but in this, like, Alana actually like takes notice and, like, soothes and comforts him and gets some like advice for where she could maybe get him some mental help, But I honestly also think, because Saga keeps breaking my heart, that it may all just be like just to get our hopes up and then just like hurt us, because like to have him taken away or something. And there's also this guy that seems to be like nice and helpful to Alana, and we can't trust him at all. I want Squire to have a happy ending, but I'm nervous that he's getting help and then like we're gonna have him taken away from us. But I don't know. It's a good cover no matter what. Like that's really you don't actually see anything that's that risque. That background of all the pink just really makes the bodies pop. Fiona Staples, she's awesome. I did an episode about Archie comics early on and how they were starting to go with like a different style than they'd used forever. It was like Mark Waid and Fiona Staples. And yeah, she just does her own thing, and I really do respect that. I really respect, and she creates fun alien monster characters. They're mostly anthropomorphic animals, but they're great. I got so disappointed in Berserker when I saw that Raphael Grandpa was only doing covers. Oh, Grandpa is awesome. I would love to see him do interiors or something like that. That's fair. Did his Batman like Gargoyle of Gotham book get finished? Or I feel like that one got hit with a bunch of delays. I'm thinking about that now. I wonder if that came out. What else do I have to talk about? This wraps up the first story arc of Dick Tracy. I've enjoyed it so much more than I expected to. It's a crime comic with a couple weirdo characters, but a pretty grounded and actually tonally really fits with the original Chester Gould comics. People definitely die. It's good. Frankenstein is got an interesting way of looking at the Frankenstein movie, where we're seeing stories about the parts of the people that formed the parts of his body. For instance, there's a criminal that fights a policeman. The policeman throws, in desperation, his lantern at the guy, and he catches on fire and falls out a window and dies. And that's who is the brain that Fritz takes for Dr. Frankenstein. And look at how brilliant this panel is. That's Dr. Frankenstein just holding up the brain in a jar. And the artist, Michael Walsh, has positioned it to overlay Dr. Frankenstein's broken brain. Some really clever visual storytelling. And it also just sort of is a cool, quick look at why the monster maybe hates fire. It's little, and maybe it's obvious, but I thought it was really well done, to be honest. It's a surprisingly good take. If you might only enjoy it if you really like the original movie, but it gives you more. It isn't just a retelling. It gives you some more detail that actually, in my opinion, fits very well. It isn't like it's shoehorned in, like, I've got this extra idea and we'll just, what property can I get a license to? I'm going to shoehorn my idea. No, it fits really well. Tonally, it fits. And then the last book I'll just briefly mention is Nightclub 2. And Mark Miller is a writer that can be hit and miss for me. I do think his stories tend to be pretty bleak. And this is a bit bleak, but I liked it. it's about some teenagers that get vampire powers, but they aren't compelled to kill, so they decide to be superheroes. They wear masks and they become superheroes. And one of the three friends had a crush on the girl that actually likes the other guy. And I thought that he was maybe going to be the villain of this piece because he's becoming like an outsider. But actually what he does is, because he's an outsider, he decides to make a girl a vampire to be a companion for him. But she actually, that was part of her plan to help make more vampires. And so he's screwed up, and he'll probably have to actually team up with his friends, I hope, which actually reteaming with some friends would be a little more hopeful than I usually get out of Mark Miller. No TMNT He-Man? No, I love Ninja Turtles, but I wouldn't say that I know. I don't really know Masters of the Universe stuff super well, to be honest. I saw the live action movie when I was young. We're at 7, and I'm actually feeling kind of tired, so I probably won't ink this on stream now that I think of it. I don't mean to disappoint everybody. But yeah, I definitely need to drink something and relax a little bit. I didn't like the first 2 issues of Nightclub 2, just the first issue, but I did like the second issue. I didn't like the first issue. I did like the second issue. Yeah, there's going to be a Ninja Turtles Naruto book eventually. Actually, I saw some art by Kerry Randolph the other day, and I don't know what he's doing. I can't do 7 hours tonight. No, I realized that I'm actually kind of beat. And honestly, I want to work some on the next comic tropes. So I found a Golden Age character that I really just I want to do it because it's a little easier for me than like reviewing 20 years of history or getting lots of quotes from different sources or something. I know it's a ridiculous Golden Age hero is a vastly different episode than my one last week where I got opinions by artists that used the Marvel method in the Silver Age. But it's just something I want to do. And I'm gathering together research for a couple things. I'll talk about it because I don't know exactly when any of these are going to be able to come out. I'm doing some research on the history of Tijuana Bibles, which were these illegal ripoffs of existing intellectual properties. They were like 8-page porno comics usually, but it was like a big thing from like the 30s through the 60s. So I want to talk about that obscure corner of comics history. Doing some research there. Currently talking to the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum to see if I can get some stuff on it because they actually have a collection of some of those issues. We'll see if they can help me. I hope so. Doing an episode on comparing how different cultures do horror through the lens of the Jaws manga, which was an adaptation of Jaws, done in 1975 over in Japan. The British shark horror comic Hookjaw, and like the American adaptation of like Jaws 2. They didn't adapt Jaws 1 as a comic, but Jaws 2, and then also like an issue of Creepy that had a shark story that was very Jaws-esque, and seeing how like different cultures sort of like approach the same horror idea. If I could find it, I'd love like to include something from, say, Argentina or Mexico, but I haven't really found any prominent shark comics by them. I'm sure there's a comic out there. Yeah, I spent years looking for this Jaws manga because I like Jaws. It's one of my favorite movies. And 1 year ago today, now that I think of it, I met up with my friend Tom, who lives in Osaka, and he helped me find that while I was there. Like, he found somebody local that was like selling a copy, and he was able to get it, and we met up and I got it. Although I also have to admit, I'm not 100% sure where I placed it. So I'm having a little trouble finding that. There's also a bunch of just artists that I really want to delve into. I want to do some more on Wallace Wood. I want to do Alan Davis. He's an artist that I really admire. And maybe even some more modern artists. I'll probably also do some interviews in the near future on comic tropes. Those may only get maybe like 10,000 views, which is kind of small, but I find them rewarding to do a deep dive interview. So we'll see. Yeah, you're not totally wrong. I think it is Cruel Jaws that I have. Yeah. I'll get to it. I'm also thinking about stuff that I'm going to do because I am going to Japan in early 2025. And I think I'll do one on Seth Fisher, who didn't have a long career but did influence a bunch of other artists. He had a really interesting open line work style that was more in common with the Claire Lean style that Hergé popularized. And he passed away in Osaka, so I might go to the place where he passed away and talk about it a little there. We'll see. I don't want to be dark, but I want to give like his full life story. I don't want to be like morbid. I just want to give his full life story, and maybe talk to some people that influenced him. And then there's some manga that I definitely want to delve into a little bit more. You got to be careful with reviewing manga because the Japanese publishers will come after you if you just sort of recap it. You have to be very careful that it's couched in careful analysis. Are you talking about the Chinese comics? I did do one on Tony Wong when I was in Hong Kong a couple years ago, so I might come back to that, but not necessarily anytime soon. Oh, yeah. Great Alan Davis artwork on that. Yeah, maybe. I was just saying that, like, I found about 4 good shark comics from different parts of the world, and if I was able to, I would have included something from, like, South America too, but I'm not going to force it if I can't find a good example. I've never heard of it, but thanks for mentioning it. I'll try to remember that. Zach Sally. I've got a lot of ideas anyway for videos, and honestly, like almost all of those are things that I can't really do on a weekly basis anymore. It's just not realistic. There was a time where I was pumping out a video a week for like about between 3 to 4 years. Every week I put it out, even if I was sick. But I was really damaging my body. I had a full-time job as well after like the first few months of starting that. And I was drinking not diet, but real Mountain Dew. And I would stay up to like 3 or 4 a.m. to finish editing things, hit that Sunday deadline, go into work. And it really, it caused some lasting damage. I overdid it. And so that's part of why I've slowed down and backed off on how fast I can put out a video. And the thing I try to do to balance the fact that I can't put things out quite as fast is I'm trying to work on increasing the quality. I hope people are seeing that. And I try to do like this live show doesn't require too much of my time, to be honest. Like this is fun for me because it lets me just talk about comics without having to write a script or do editing. So this is fun for me to just talk comics. So that's part like sort of where just if anybody's curious, maybe I'm talking way too much about myself instead of comics, but that's some explanation of why I've slowed down versus where I was for the first few years. Yes. It's YouTube, being a YouTuber on any level is harder work than you might think in terms of how many hours you have to devote to continuing to make something new. It's really hard to take breaks from it. I do, and I will. In fact, just to be clear, like in 3 weeks, I am taking a few days off to go to New York. I'm going to go to New York Comic Con for one day, and I won't be able to do my Monday show because that's the day I'll be flying back. That's the day I'll be flying back. But anyway, thanks. I personally was very happy with the Marvel method. A few people thought that I was beating up on Stan Lee and his legacy. That wasn't my goal. It really wasn't. I was just trying to say, look, we've always heard Stan Lee describe the Marvel method, and that's why I included him literally describing it at the beginning. But what we haven't heard as much is what some of the artists had to say. And some of them, to be clear, I said, didn't really mind it. John Buscema and John Romita liked it. They didn't say a lot about it, but they liked it. But let's get a variety of opinions. That's all I wanted to do. Well, if you get a chance, I did do a 7-hour live stream. It's on the channel. It's an indie showcase, letting people talk about their comics. If you go there, I've got chapter breaks. So you could if you're not feeling something, you could jump ahead to the next chapter. Maybe that comic will interest you. I also have links to everybody's projects in the description of that episode. 29 people. I thought a lot of them were fantastic. There were a few that were really great discoveries on more emerging artists, or what I would consider emerging artists. Doesn't necessarily mean young, but emerging as in newer to making their own comics. There were a few that were really, really good in there, and a few campaigns. So I would encourage you to take a look if you're looking to discover a new comic, something that you haven't necessarily seen a million times before. Anyway, I'm proud of what I'm doing right now, and I will try to keep making good content. I've had a good time tonight. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up, giving me questions, giving me comments, feedback, their feedback on the comics and the comics news, as well as the kind things that you had to say to both Danny Earls and Jim Mahfood. So yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, my friend, bought the cover, and I thought it would be fun to draw something on it. What I would really like to do, if I get to the point where I've inked Leonardo, black out almost everything, and then use some whiteout to draw lots of raindrops, including puddles. So that's why there's not much of a background. I want it to almost all be just weather. We'll see if I can do it well. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't before. Leave a comment after if you haven't seen this live and you're watching it later. Appreciate that stuff. Gives me an idea of when people watch this and what they're interested in. Thank you for everything, guys. And I know what to say. I've got it. Keep reading comics. Take care, everybody. Double salute. It's the most I can give. I'm not so flexible that I can bring my feet up and give you the quadruple salute, so you'll have to settle for 2 until I grow a third arm. Take care. Have a great night. Bye.